On today's show, the Baltimore Ravens rivalry with the Cincinnati Bengals is picking up steam at a rapid pace. We talk about Isaiah Likely's spicy comments, as well as a former Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back giving the Ravens some respect. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in and happy Friday. We are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day as well. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms, so if you're here with us in video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're here with us in audio form, wherever you get your podcast, you can follow along and subscribe there as well. And we are your daily Ravens destination. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Friday, another week coming and going as we get closer and closer to Ravens regular season football. I'm just waiting for these weeks to go by. And the NFL is a league that never sleeps. It's really 365 days a year. And we are talking more today about the Ravens and one of their AFC North rivals, a team that's become more of a rival in recent seasons in the Cincinnati Bengals. If you were with us yesterday, we had Rita Hubbard on the show, and we talked about Isaiah Likely going on the Up and Adam show and giving some comments about his extension, a possible extension with Baltimore. Well, in that same interview, Isaiah Likely also had comments on the Bengals and the whole schedule controversy that's going on. So, look, if you had told me before the week started, I would have essentially like 3.5 shows this week talking about the Bengals and the Ravens. I would have said, what are you talking about? But here we are again. Isaiah Likely threw some spicy comments the Bengals' way when talking about the very controversial schedule quirk the Ravens have over Cincinnati. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show. Former Steelers DB showed respect to the Ravens. We'll talk about that in the second part of the show. And then we'll get into some what to watch for at OTAs because, look, that's coming up next week. Next week is when that starts. So we'll be diving into that in the final part of the show because it's a checklist, right? We're checking off boxes, and OTAs is another one that you kind of look forward to. So let's dive into it here. Isaiah Likely, who is looking for a contract extension. We talked about that on yesterday's show. He went on with Up and Adams and talked about a big bucket of things. And I think the thing that everybody now is looking at is his comments towards the Bengals. Now, for those that don't know what I'm talking about or haven't tuned into a show this week or haven't seen what's going on with the Ravens and Bengals schedule controversy, I'll just run it down here quickly. So the Bengals and Ravens are playing on the third straight year on Thursday Night Football in Baltimore. Cincinnati hasn't won the previous 2 meetings there. It's the fourth time in NFL history that the team has played on the road for 3 straight years on Thursday night. The Bengals have hosted the Ravens only once on Thursday night since 2006, and in the last 20 years, the Ravens are 9-0 hosting Thursday night games. And the Bengals are 2-6 on the road, but 7-2 at home in Thursday night games. And the Ravens are 9-0 on Thursday at home, as I mentioned, but 2-6 on the road. So everybody's wondering, well, this is unfair to Cincinnati. So why doesn't Cincinnati get the game? Yada, yada, yada. And Mike North, who does a lot of the scheduling stuff, obviously has a very high position doing that stuff in the NFL, said that they couldn't schedule the Ravens twice on Thursday night because they already play a Thursday night game against the Dolphins before the Bengals game on Thanksgiving. So they get the game in Baltimore. Joe Burrow had comments about it. We talked about that with Jess Rebick of The Athletic a couple of days ago. So if you haven't checked that show out, be sure to do so. But on the Up and Adam show, Isaiah Likely was asked about the Bengals and the Ravens, and he talked about the Ravens atmosphere a lot. M&T Banks just was gushing about it. He said, quote, "If you've ever been to the bank on a Monday night, Thursday night, when the crowd's rocking, everything goes pitch black, you see the purple lights go out, you know the crowd's about to be rocking." He said the Bengals just always happen to have those type of games where you come to the bank, you see those purple lights go on, the fans are ready, they know it's a divisional game, they don't like us, we don't like them. We love the atmosphere. We love playing at the bank. You know, that's how you know it's kind of a rivalry, that we don't like them and they don't like us. You know, you hear that a lot. Like, that's what everybody says about the Ravens and Steelers and all these other teams. But the Bengals, again, they have come up as a rival for Baltimore over the last handful of seasons. And, they had that Super Bowl run that didn't end in a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Before that, not a ton of success for Cincinnati. They were kind of that team that you're along with Cleveland. And we'll get to this in the second part of the show too, with the former Steelers DB having some of these comments. And the Bengals are just like there. And, they have talent on their roster. But to me, like, my whole thing with this, just very quickly before we get into the spiciness of Isaiah Likely, and that was one part of it with the we don't like them, they don't like us. To me, it's just lace them up and play. Like, yeah, it's a disadvantage. I get that. I understand it. But if this was the Ravens on the opposite side, I certainly would feel some type of way about it. But I wouldn't let it get to the point that it has, for both of these sides, honestly. And Isaiah Likely, when kind of asked about Joe Burrow's comments and that, because Joe Burrow obviously essentially pleading with the NFL, hey, can we get one of these games in Cincinnati on Thursday night? Isaiah Likely says, quote, I don't even know what their stadium is called. I just know when you come to the bank in primetime television, that's just somewhere where no one else would rather be. And Kay Adams is like, you just gave Joe Burrow Baltimore material. And, Isaiah Likely, he laughed it off and said, that's just common knowledge. I just didn't know the stadium name. I just know the bank. So, was Isaiah trying to be like malicious in this comment? I think it was more Isaiah complimenting Baltimore and the atmosphere. But I think, yeah, he doesn't know the name of that stadium. He understands the atmosphere with the Ravens and what Baltimore and the game presentation and those lights, like he talked about. But he didn't like take it back, and Isaiah stood on business. And essentially it's not like the Roquan comments from last week. Like, I think that's a whole different story. Isaiah was not like that in these comments. Like, Roquan was like, hey, yeah, this is like, I want to beat Buffalo, and that revenge is served cold, like the best dish served cold, or whatever Roquan said. Like, it wasn't those types of comments, but, coming out and saying you don't know what a team stadium is called, whether you meant it a certain way or not, that is going to draw eyeballs, to draw ears. And so, hey, you know what? I love it, because you know what? If Joe Burrow is going to go out there and complain about it, then, the Ravens players should have their say too. And you know what's going to happen? I've talked about this all week. The Bengals are going to get the game in Cincinnati on Thursday night next year. Just be prepared for it. I'll try to remember this Friday, May 23rd. And if you want to clip this up for next year, you can. Cincinnati is going to play Baltimore on Thursday night next season in Cincinnati. On FanDuel, they had a button for Ravens Bengals Thursday night 2026. Cincinnati, I'd be throwing everything I have on that. Like, it is going to happen. And you know what? Yeah, schedule disadvantages happen. I get it. But every team deals with it. Every team deals with it. And you know what? The game, honestly, like, I'm glad it's in Baltimore. Not just because, oh, hey, the Ravens don't have to deal with the disadvantage of traveling, but like Isaiah said, the scheduling with that, the difficulty, you can't do 2 Thursday night games. Yeah, that's one thing. But having the atmosphere that Baltimore has, and like Cincinnati has its own atmosphere. Cincinnati is the jungle and everything. And honestly, off the top of my head, look, being it's Paycor there, but with everything that Cincinnati has going on, yeah, it's a different atmosphere. But I don't know, just Baltimore, the vibes there, it's electric. And Baltimore's also dealt with scheduled disadvantages. They had that Pittsburgh Cleveland thing a couple years ago. They had a bunch of travel here. Like, every team deals with scheduled disadvantages, right? Every team deals with it. The Ravens have advantages. They also have disadvantages this year too, right? They have to play a lot of divisional games late. They have to play 5 of 6 division winners to open their season. Like, every team has scheduled advantages and disadvantages. I don't know why we're whining about this one. Like, I don't. The Ravens have to go to Miami and play on a short week. The Bengals have to come to Baltimore to play on a short week. Like, I get it's unfair that the Ravens have had it 3 times in a row. It's 4 straight years of primetime games dating back to 2022 in Baltimore that Cincinnati hasn't had. I understand that part of it. But I just feel like there are other things that are more important. Like, this is not the biggest deal in the world. And let me tell you, if it was on the Ravens side and they were dealing with it, again, yeah, I'd have a problem with it. But I wouldn't have this be like, because you just know if the Ravens win, against the Bengals on Thanksgiving, all the excuses are going to be, oh, the Bengals have the disadvantage. No, if the Ravens lost the game and they were away, the Ravens lost the game because every team deals with advantages and disadvantages. I just don't get it. I don't get it. So the Bengals will get their game next season. That'll be that. But I don't know why it's a big deal. And honestly, I like Isaiah Likely making that comment because it's a whole weird situation. And the fact that it's in Baltimore, I'm sure that honestly, the game presentation people who, again, do a wonderful job in Baltimore are going to pull out every single stop that they can to show, hey, you know what? Baltimore is a really awesome place to play. We know that, we watch this team. We know that the atmosphere is second to none, in my opinion. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are some extra additions. And again, I don't know anything. I'm just guessing, speculating that could potentially be something. But Isaiah Likely, he's making comments about the stadium, maybe a Bengal. I'm sure that'll get brought up when these two teams meet up for the first time on Thanksgiving. So going to be interesting. This probably is not the last time we'll be talking about Isaiah Likely's comments. But for this show, we're going to be talking about a different AFC North team in the second part of the show, talking about a former Steelers DB, giving the Ravens some respect. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Look, nothing can live up to what Game 1 was between the Pacers and the Knicks. Now, I had said that I liked the Pacers in that game, and they certainly delivered, not in the way I thought they would, but they did. Now, the Knicks still are 6-point favorites at home against the Pacers in Game 2. I like the Pacers. I like them to go up 2-0. Maybe you want to build a same-game parlay. Tyrese Halliburton over Aaron Nesmith after his game. Maybe you're going over for him, and maybe a guy like Miles Turner, you like him to go over as well for the Pacers. So be sure that if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We're back for our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Purple Friday. Again, I appreciate everybody for being here. Hopefully everybody has a great Memorial weekend in store. I know there are sales galore going on right now. Hopefully you're going to maybe enjoy it with some friends, some family, or just relax and hang out. Either which way, wishing everybody a very happy Memorial Day and Memorial Day weekend. But here, let's dive into another AFC North team. We talked a lot about the Bengals in the first part of the show, but we're not done talking about them, though, because some of the former Steelers defensive backs' comments have a little something to do with how these four teams in the AFC North are run. So for those that don't know, Bryant McFadden, who was a former Steelers defensive back, he talked about this on the Ed Block Courage Cast and talked about AFC North. And he said, the thing about the AFC North, all four teams hate each other. It's a toss-up between the two in terms of, which team he has that like, oh, I don't like you type feel. And he said, the Steelers really, really, really hate Cleveland and Cincinnati. We really, really, really hate Baltimore. But the hate for Baltimore is a little different because there's a mutual respect because of the similarities in how the organizations have been hard work and play great defense. And so this is kind of how people group up these four teams. Obviously, the way that Baltimore and Pittsburgh run their organizations versus the way that Cincinnati and Cleveland run their organizations. And this is common knowledge, right? Where the Steelers and the Ravens, they are able to develop talent. They are usually competitive every year, or at least most every year. And they are able to identify guys in the draft that, for example, like Cleveland and Cincinnati, and this is something that Brian McFadden talked about, they're always picking up high, it feels like, right? Where the Browns, I could name a billion number 1, number 2, top 10 picks they've had. And then for Cincinnati, I know Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are the two recent examples, but, it's more than that. And so, yes, the Bengals hit on Joe Burrow. That was an easy call. Jamar Chase, I know there was that whole Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase thing. That was, to me, also an easy call. But the Ravens are able to find guys in the 20s. Steelers find guys in the 20s, late teens. Like, they do that. And so Brian McFadden also talked about the Bengals because, you know, some of the people he was talking with, like, man, the Bengals are the worst in the division. And he ended up saying, yeah, the Bengals, they talk so much like they've won. And that's where, going back to the first part of the show, when I was talking about Cincinnati and like they had that Super Bowl run, and look, it was an impressive Super Bowl run. You know, I think they got lucky with their health, and that is every team most years, where sometimes it is just the healthiest teams advance or the healthiest teams win the Super Bowl. And it's not every year, but it certainly plays a factor. But, you know, they haven't sniffed that since. They've missed the playoffs in back-to-back years. They historically start slow in the organizations, in my opinion, and it's unfortunate for the fan bases, but they're just very poorly run. And you can see it in everyday actions. Like the Bengals ponied up the money for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Good but risky decision, right? Paying those two guys top dollar when you have a guy in Trey Hendrickson who, by the way, just eats against the Ravens. Like, he is a problem, and if he gets traded out of the AFC North, we're going to come on here, we're going to celebrate. We're going to celebrate because Trey Hendrickson is a beast. But the Bengals can't pony up the money to sign him. They don't want to pony up the money to sign him. You know, Cleveland makes weird decisions seemingly every other day, and I'm not in on them at all until they win something because, you know, we had to sit here, you know, covering this Ravens team when Odell signed with them, when Jarvis Landry, and, you know, oh, Cleveland's the offseason champs. They're winning the Super Bowl. They were the offseason champs for what, like 5 years in a row? And what did they do? Nothing. They did nothing. You know, the teams like the Ravens and the Steelers, there's that hate. There is a rivalry between those two. You know, we're not in the Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, Ray Lewis, Hines Award days, right? We're not there. But there is that respect. And that's something that I've said on this show for a long time, where you can respect, you know, look, being a Ravens guy for all my life and, you know, watching these games, there is that hate. Like, man, it's like Isaiah likely said, right? We talked about it. They don't like us. We don't like them. Like, it just is what it is. But there's always that respect. It just doesn't feel like for Pittsburgh and Baltimore, they have that for Cincinnati, and especially Cincinnati because of the way that they talk. And then, you know, Cleveland just is Cleveland. I don't even know what to say about Cleveland, if we're being honest. Like, again, weird decisions seemingly every day, it feels like. And to me, like, it's very clear that the hierarchy in this division where, you know, Baltimore to me is at the top. Pittsburgh obviously has their moments as well. Don't get me wrong, but it's very, very rare Cincinnati's up there. And it is practically never happening that Cleveland is up there. So to me, the Ravens and the Steelers, and that's why when you talk about this division this season, you know, even Pittsburgh is in turmoil this year. Where, look, I wouldn't be shocked if some of that crazy Baltimore-Pittsburgh stuff happens and Baltimore loses a game to the Steelers like 12-10 like we've seen before. But the Ravens are just objectively better than these teams right now in the AFC North. And again, I'd be a fool if I came on this show on May 23rd and said the Ravens were winning the AFC North, and there's no doubt about it, because anything can happen. You know, I'm not going to say that. But on paper, and that's why this is the offseason, because we say on paper, Baltimore is balanced in all three phases, right? There are certainly some question marks, but the Steelers don't have a quarterback right now. And if they do, it's Mason Rudolph. The Bengals don't have a defense. And if you listen to me on Locked On Ravens this past season, I was going off on that Bengals defense. One of the worst defenses I've ever seen, in my opinion. Like, the Bengals, they should have moved on from Zach Taylor 2 years ago. And they just continue to keep him around for what? The Browns, again, there's not a lot you can say about that team. I mean, the Deshaun Watson was a horrible mistake, for many different reasons. But, you know, you move on from Baker Mayfield. Now Baker's thriving in Tampa. Like, just feels like there are like 3 the one that got away every single year for them. So I think that Brian McFadden's comments kind of sheds light on something I think a lot of people understood and knew, right? I don't think this is any secret to anybody, but, you know, hearing it from a former Steelers player where, you know, that Ravens-Steelers rivalry is real, but you at least understand and you can shake your opponent's hand at the end of the day and say, you know what, I don't like you very much, but, you know, we respect the way you do things. Cincinnati and Cleveland, it doesn't feel that way. So we'll see. Again, maybe the Bengals offense puts up 50 points a game and, you know, that's how they beat teams. Or maybe Cleveland, Joe Flacco has a resurgence again and he's able to lead them to the playoffs. Because, again, stuff like that does happen. But at least on paper, to me, it's Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, and Browns. And that is how I expect this division to finish up. But coming up in the final part of the show, OTAs are on the horizon. We'll talk about what to watch for and so much more coming up on the show. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, rounding out another week of Locked On Ravens, and really appreciate everybody for being here. Be sure to tell a friend, tell a family member that we're here for them, just like we are here for you on Locked On Ravens. And if you're an everydayer, thank you for tuning in each and every day. If it's your first time listening, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you are somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support. Now, OTAs, they will kick off for the Ravens next week. Very exciting. Very exciting. So May 27th, Tuesday, is going to be the first day for them. They will have that through Thursday. So it'll be Tuesday through Thursday, then June 3rd, June 5 and 6, and then 9 through 12. Now, how OTAs work, they'll have 10 days, and there's no live contact, but you have 7-on-7s, 9-on-7s, 11-on-11s. That is what's permitted during OTAs. So there are a couple of things to unpack here. First of all, voluntary. All right. We talked about this with Rita Hubbard yesterday, and she made good points on this. Until mandatory is in the word, is in the phrase, players can do what they want. And that's what I have been saying for years on this show. Mandatory minicamp does not start until June 17th. If the guys don't show up to that, then there are problems. But if Lamar Jackson does not show up to OTAs, if some of these veterans do not show up to OTAs, I am not going to come on here and say, oh, Lamar's such a bad leader. Oh, Lamar, what? This is a disgrace. No, I've never been that way, and I will never be that way, because we know these guys are working this offseason. We know that when mandatory happens, they're going to show up. If they don't, then that's a problem when it's mandatory. But if it's voluntary, it's not like Lamar's been sitting around all spring doing nothing, right? And it's not like he's going to do that and continue to do that. He is working. We have seen it. We've seen Rashod Bateman do it. We've seen Zay Flowers. That list goes on and on and on. So if guys want to show up, be in the facility, be around their teammates, hey, that's great. Like, ideally, everyone would show up. That's the best case scenario. But it's just not realistic, and that's fine. Because honestly, OTAs are meant more for the younger guys anyway. Right? Get those guys reps, especially the rookies. Like, you want to see what you have. We know what Lamar Jackson can do. We know what Derrick Henry can do. These guys, they don't need OTAs. Like, again, it's awesome if they're there. Obviously from a leadership perspective, it's great, being able to establish camaraderie with rookies, continue to strengthen bonds and relationships and all that. But I'm not going to come on here and be that guy that says that everybody has to show up for voluntary workouts. When it's mandatory, yeah, you got to show up. Voluntary, it's awesome if guys show up, but it's not the end of the world if they don't. So we get a little bit more into players to watch probably on Monday's show once we kick off another week here on Locked On Ravens, like the day before OTAs begin. But I really do want to emphasize the fact that, this is a big opportunity for a lot of guys. Like, I'd expect players like Malaki Starks and Mike Green in this class to get a lot of run. And guys who are fighting for roster spots, like, hey, Jalen Armour-Davis, what can you show? Maybe a Sanusi Kane or Bo Braid can show that they are the answer in the wake of Ardarius Washington going down for the season, or most of it, is we got the reports that we don't know how long that timeline is, but Ardarius, if I had to guess, probably won't come back, but we will see how that unfolds, right? I think it'd be really cool to see a guy like Keaton Mitchell, get some reps here. Wide receiver wise, Tez Walker, is there a year or two leap for him? What about a guy like LeJontay Wester or Aeneas Peebles in the rookie class for Baltimore? Late round steals potentially. Like, Aeneas Peebles is someone that I was all in on during the draft process, and I hope to see what he can do. But again, it's just there's only so much you can take away. There's no live contact. Like, it's essentially a very toned down practice, more like a walkthrough. You're not really going to learn a lot about these guys, right? Especially because, we talk about this when training camp first kicks off and before pads come on in training camp. Like, there is a set level of like, hey, you can take away X amount when the guys don't have pads on. But when the pads come on, especially for like offensive linemen, defensive linemen, that's when you can really tell. We're not going to be able to tell a lot during OTAs. There are some things you can take away. We'll certainly be talking about those on the show, but I'm not going to overreact to, a bad practice from a rookie if it happens, or a young guy if it happens. We'll talk about it, right? It's definitely important to talk about it. But I'm more so kind of looking at guys like David Ajabo who have something to prove, right? Maybe a guy like Trenton Simpson. What does he have? If Roquan isn't there, well, Trenton Simpson gets first team reps, and that's what it is, right? Like if Lamar isn't there, we'll see what Cooper Rush can do, which, that's super exciting. No, but like, again, it's guys who are ahead of them. They're going to be getting the reps once mandatory minicamp kicks off and training camp kicks off. OTAs is a good opportunity. Hey, the ones, yeah, you're a second-year guy, you're a young rookie, go out there. You're with the ones, and that's going to be really important. So, we can kind of run down the rest of Baltimore's roster. We've kind of already done it a little bit, but, tight end position, I'm sure Charlie Kohler will probably be there. I think Isaiah Likely, right? Hopefully he will be there. I don't expect the Ravens to have any guys, and this is more of a mandatory minicamp thing anyway, but, once we get there, I don't really expect anybody to be holding out /in. I know we kind of saw that with J.K. Dobbins a couple of years ago. I don't really expect that, if we're being honest. I can't even really put a name on someone who would, right? There are a lot of extensions Baltimore has to get done, but again, I think that while they should be a priority, I'd be a little surprised if something like that did happen. Again, if it does, we'll talk about it, but I don't know what's next for that front. We've talked about it all throughout the week, all throughout the month. But for now, it's really only Derrick Henry that's been signed. So again, I wouldn't expect a lot of the vets there. Like I just would prepare for that now. A lot of exciting storylines certainly to watch for at OTAs, and we're going to dive into all of it here on the show, especially when it comes to those players, because Baltimore has stars. We know that Baltimore has stars. They have a ton of star power, but they also need the depth to step up as well, especially because injuries do happen. Some guys won't pan out like we saw last season with the safety group. So a lot of intriguing things to look at for sure. But that's all I have for here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show today. We're taking a 2-day break here on Locked On Ravens unless something crazy happens and there's a headline or storyline we have to talk about. Then, of course, we'll be back reacting to it. But in case that does not happen, we will be back on Monday. We're diving into everything relating to Baltimore Ravens, OTAs, and other Ravens storylines. So be sure on the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and I will see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.